Now to the campaign trail. The conventions are done, but there are still many key dates to come. In about 2 weeks, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump debate each other for the first time. 8 days after that, Trump is scheduled to face a New York judge to hear his punishment for falsifying business records. 2 days later, early in-person voting begins in some states, including Minnesota. That's the home, as you all know, of Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, who, less than 2 weeks after that, will debate his opponent, J.D. Vance, on CBS. In between will be dozens of rallies, fundraising events, and campaign ad releases, all leading to Election Day on November 5th. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett will be watching all of it, and he joins me now. Major, the Harris campaign put out more fundraising numbers. They're very proud of themselves. They've raised, they say, $540 million since launching, the most of any presidential campaign in that time span. Help us put that in perspective for us. And how does all that cash get used, and will it affect the race?
So, of course, it will affect the race, John. Every presidential campaign wants more money, and for a couple of reasons. Money is kind of a barometer of how much emotional support there is and how much practical support there is for your candidacy. People write small checks, and that allows you to fund your campaign. And it's important in this one regard. Campaign money directly sent to a presidential campaign buys television ads at the lowest available rate across the country. Super PACs don't get that favorable rate. They sometimes have to pay 4, 5, maybe 10 times that lowest rate that a presidential campaign can acquire with what is called, in campaign finance circles, hard money. So the more money you have in reserve as a presidential campaign, the better you're able to spread your message, at least through television. And right now, the Harris campaign has about a $60 million cash on hand advantage over former President Trump. Now, super PACs aligned with former President Trump have about a $110 million advantage over Harris-aligned super PACs. But they have to spend a lot more to get their ads on TV, which means they don't get the same bang for their buck. So all of this money matters. And of course, all money held by a presidential campaign also funds something else, which is ground operations. And right now, the Harris-Walz campaign has volunteers pouring through the doors in all the battleground states. And to give those volunteers the wherewithal to do that ground game work, you need to have materiel, phones, phone banking, all the other instruments of that. And you buy that what? With campaign donations. So money matters.
That was great. Thank you, Major. All right, now we're going on to a second. Just had to admire that for a minute. So today, former President Trump laid a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier to mark the 3rd anniversary of the Abbey Gate bombing, which killed 13 service members during the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, a signature foreign policy disaster for the Biden administration. Trump highlights this. On the other hand, several of Trump's national security advisors and secretaries of defense have said he should not be reelected. So with those as two kind of sides of this, how do you think national security will play out in this campaign?
The Afghanistan withdrawal is something that former President Trump will revisit over and over again for all sorts of reasons, not only to honor those American service personnel who died in the service of our country, but to the chaotic withdrawal and all the guarantees made by President Biden before that withdrawal that it would not be chaotic, that nothing would go wrong or nothing would go wrong nearly as badly as it did. And that was, to use a phrase that President Biden uses with some frequency, an inflection point for his presidency. Because it was after that event, John, that support for President Biden among independents began to decline and decline perceptibly, and has not rebounded since then. Kamala Harris now doesn't have to deal with that, but nevertheless, she is, according to former President Trump, included in that circle of leadership that made all the decisions leading up to that withdrawal and all the things that went wrong. So former President Trump wants to align Kamala Harris as directly as he once did President Biden with Afghanistan. But the problem for the Trump campaign, John, and this is an interesting dimension of this election, is it's not sticking as much as it did with President Biden. The burden for the Trump campaign is to make things that once stuck very hard and clearly to President Biden the same to Kamala Harris. That's the work yet to be done for the Trump campaign.
And one of the things he'll try and do, former President Trump, is bring that case during the debate. But there's been this foolishness about Donald Trump. I say that because former President Trump threatened to pull out of the debate. And I can't count how many times he's threatened to pull out of debates over the last 9 years. Why does he do this? Is it to get attention? Is it to work the refs? What's behind these antics.
The key question is, why is he doing it now? And the now part of this is what's most important, John, because former President Trump finds himself in an utterly unique position in this campaign. He is no longer driving the conversation. And importantly, Democrats are no longer triggered by things that former President Trump says that are outrageous or they find injurious rhetorically or otherwise, racist or misogynistic or whatever. Democrats don't react to it in ways that they did before. That was clearly evident at the Democratic National Convention. Democrats now either ignore the incendiary things that former President Trump says or treat them with some dimension of mockery. Therefore, former President Trump has to get involved in the conversation at a different level. He knows if he talks about his status in the debate, he will at least get some attention. You have to pay attention to whether or not he's going to show up at the debate. But you know and I know, in our guts and everything else that we're learning, he'll be there September 10th, and this is just a bit of attention grabbing in between.
Major Garrett in Washington. Thank you so much, Major.